Big Fat Simulations presents Radar Chaos Hawaii Edition. This walkthrough should get you going with the first of the 4 levels, the en route high-level sector. This airspace is located north of the Hawaiian Islands. It's high-level airspace. It handles aircraft that's just come in off the ocean and is ready to be sequenced for their arrival into Honolulu, Maui, Lihu, and the big island of Hawaii. I'll put away this flight data board for a moment here. As you can see, we've got 3 aircraft, and by hovering over them I see that they're all headed into Honolulu at the bottom left corner of the screen. This shows their flight plan route. So my job as an en route controller here is to bring them all to this waypoint here called Maggie, to send them all to 17,000 feet and ship them over to the Honolulu controller. This aircraft over here has a flashing H, which means the aircraft's not mine. It belongs to the Oceania controller, and they're wanting me to accept it. So I'll click the H. Now if I try to click on the aircraft, it won't respond because the aircraft's not on my frequency yet. I just accepted it. That controller is now telling the pilot to call me, and when the pilot checks in, then I can start giving instructions. This aircraft here is the first one I'm going to handle. They're at 36,000 feet. They need to be assigned 17,000. I can determine that by bringing up the overlay, which tells me all about Honolulu arrivals and how they have to be descended to 17,000 feet and how they have to be 10 miles in trail of each other. Or I can just cheat and look at the panel, and it says here assign altitude 17,000. That's easy. I click 17,000, the aircraft's on its way down. There's a green arc at the bottom left here, and that's belonging to this aircraft, United 323. The green arc indicates bottom of descent or top of climb, and it just tells me that's where the aircraft is realistically going to reach 17,000. It's handy. Okay, WestJet 538 is also on my frequency, on their way down to 17,000. I have a bit of an issue here. 2 aircraft pointed more or less towards one another. This aircraft's at 31,000 feet and climbing, and I see that they only have 35,000 feet assigned to them so far. Delta 429 is at 40,000 feet, so there's no immediate emergency. But I won't descend this Delta just yet, just not until I move this aircraft out of the way. They want to go direct to a place called Toads. If I bring up the overlay, you can see that Toads is up at the top left. So the aircraft should start a turn. Let me turn on the future path to see that. The aircraft's starting a turn. And once I see the turn start to happen, I'll bring Delta down. Oh, I've got another handoff here. And one more. And oh, here's a 737 climbing out of Maui. I've got to take that handoff as well. I have a bit of a problem here. These 2 aircraft, they look like they're tied for this waypoint called Maggie. If I turn on their, forgive this panel, it's just a beta panel. It'll look prettier when we release. But if I turn on the mileage for both these aircraft, it tells me that United 323 is 44 miles away from Maggie. WestJet 538 is only 2 miles behind United. That's not enough space. If I let these 2 aircraft fly into Honolulu only 2 miles apart, the next controller down the line is going to get angry at me because they like airplanes to be spaced 10 miles in trail. They receive streams of traffic from me as well as other controllers from different directions. And if we give a bunch of airplanes to them all in one clump, it's going to clog things up. So the requirement is that we give streams of traffic of airplanes that are nicely spaced 10 miles apart. So how am I going to do this? I could slow this aircraft right down and try to build in 10 miles, but I think the easiest thing is to just give what's called a delay vector. I'm going to put them on a heading like that. I'll turn on the future path so you can see. And it shows that this aircraft is going to fly southeast. And I'll leave them on that heading until I build in the necessary 10 miles. And I'll turn on the future path for United 323 as well. And you can see that there is no conflict per se. They're not going to hit, but they're not necessarily going to be going into Honolulu in an orderly fashion if they're only 3 miles apart at Maggie down here. So there's always lots to do. I've got to accept a handoff here on this flight. I've got American 151 going into Maui. an A330 up here on their way into, well, let's bring up the flight data board and take a look. 951 is destined for Kona, and they're at 33,000 feet. These two could be an issue. I'm going to turn on the future paths and just watch the situation. And I'll come up with a solution in a moment here. Delta 429 is in the clear. I'm going to give them 17,000 feet. I'm going to turn on their mileage as well. And I can see I've got a bit of a situation developing here. Looks like 4 aircraft now, all going into Honolulu. I'll turn off some of these paths because this is getting a little bit cluttered. I can see that WestJet 392 is tied pretty much with this Delta 429. I've only got 8 miles and I need to have 10. So how I'm going to resolve this, I'm going to tell this WestJet flight to go fast. I'll do that by clicking on its Mach speed, bringing it up to something like Mach 8.1. Now the problem with doing just that is that aircraft only fly Mach speeds at high altitudes. Mach is only good up at high altitudes. Once the aircraft descends, the pilot will eventually abandon their Mach and they'll start flying what's called indicated airspeed. So the fact that I've told them to go Mach 8.1 is going to mean nothing in a couple minutes. So I need to also tell them, when you transition to your indicated speed, make it a fast indicated airspeed. So I've changed it as Mach speed, and as well I've changed it to indicated speed. That's a bit of a complicated topic. It only applies to aircraft that are descending. Back to the situation here. I've got my mileage, so I'll send WestJet direct to Maggie. I'll turn off this future path so we can see what's going on. I've got 11 miles between these two. That's plenty. WestJet 392 could very well ram into the back of WestJet here, so we might have to slow him back even further. Delta 429 is going to be crowding WestJet just from looking at the miles here, 47.39. So I'll give Delta a delay vector. Here's a handoff that I must take, and that could potentially impact my my WestJet 392 here. I'm going to have to watch that very closely. Another handoff to take. These two don't look like they're going to be any problem at all, so I'll assign their final altitudes. 26,000 only for this flight that's headed for Kona. Kona is so far to the south that 26,000 feet is appropriate. I've got a couple of aircraft here getting close to the edge of my sector. I need to put them into the handoff. I won't switch that aircraft over just yet in terms of frequencies because the Honolulu controller hasn't accepted that plane yet. Now that Honolulu controller has accepted the handoff. So now it's okay to tell the pilot to switch to the Honolulu controller. And he's gone. You're seeing a couple of red future lines pop up here. This is predicting that these two aircraft could very well conflict with each other in a hurry. As you can see, this WestJet flight is seriously overtaking this one here. It's mainly because of altitude. This aircraft was left up high for very long. So I'm going to fix that by giving the aircraft yet another turn. And hopefully those red warnings will go away. These two aren't going to be a problem because there's a lot of speed difference. I can just tell that they're going to keep their 5 miles of separation. So I'll give this aircraft its assigned altitude, its flight plan altitude of 33,000 feet. Now I've got red warning lines between these two aircraft. So I will turn Delta to the right a little bit and hopefully those warnings will go away. Yep, they did. Whoop, I'm a bit late giving this aircraft a handoff. Now you might have noticed that after I handed this aircraft off to Honolulu, that pretty tag went away. And that's because this aircraft is no longer on my frequency. It's no longer in my airspace. I don't care about it, so I don't need to see that detail. It would be nice to know what it is, what altitude the aircraft is at, and so therefore that's the only information that I see. Okay, I've got to hand that aircraft off. I've got a few things to do here actually. I need to watch these two aircraft here, L952 and Delta 429. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is move this aircraft right out of the way. The pilot won't like a steep turn like that, and my efficiency meter will get penalized for doing something that wild, but this is what happens when you try and control and talk simultaneously. Up here, this aircraft is flashing, meaning the adjacent controller has accepted the aircraft, and now I must tell the pilot to contact that controller. Previous radar simulations that we've created, we've had this option to assign a specific frequency. Contact Honolulu on 126.1 type thing. But we feel that's adding a lot of complexity, and it's not really adding to the fun. So we've simplified it by simply adding a switch button. Switch. And the aircraft contacts the next sector. Switch. Okay, I've got good mileage. This aircraft can go direct to Maggie. And I will also put this aircraft into a handoff. I'll send this aircraft direct to Maggie as well. I've got my required mileage between these aircraft. 952 can be turned on course, direct Aziba. Where's Aziba? Let's bring up the overlay. There it is, Aziba. Where is he going, by the way? Anyways, 952, departure. 952, he's going to Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas. He's out of, he's climbing from the west, headed for Vegas by way of Aziba. And then Romeo 577 track. Okay, we don't really care about what happens when he's off of our screen. You see some lines popping up here with numbers on them. These are helping us out, warning us that aircraft are getting a little bit close. It's similar to the red warning lines you saw earlier, but these are automatic, and they're helpful when you're trying to sequence more than one aircraft. I had meant to give this aircraft direct to Maggie, but I had neglected to do that properly. Okay, so I've made a mess here. I need to get these aircraft climbing. Now, as you can see, these red lines have come back again. I can't seem to get it straight to save my life. Because I left this aircraft on a heading for so long, now Delta's catching up. So I'm scrambling here. About the only thing I can do is give another delay vector to this Delta. If I wasn't talking so much, this would have gone a lot more smoothly. You know, this might be a good time for me to stop part one before you see the conclusion here. And I'll start a part 2 tutorial, and I'll try to go into a few other things like where we're supposed to direct aircraft that are going to locations such as Lihu off the screen, and Kona, and Hilo, and how to handle departures, and what a SID is. And this, what I've done so far, is enough to get you going, and be on the lookout for a part 2 very soon. I hope you've enjoyed watching this as much as I've enjoyed making it. Thanks for your time.